country sure as hell been going down the drain.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening.
Why should you want to know? Don't you mind about the future?
And now, for your listening pleasure, streaming live from Big Johnson Studios, it's the Ledge Radio Show with media entertainment phenom JD.
Welcome to the program. Welcome. Phone lines are open, 239-689-8674. You can email me, jd@theledgeradioshow.com. Thanks to executive producer Tripod Billy, we're streaming live video. You can view us at theledgeradioshow.com. Check out the website, click the live streaming button. It'll take you to our live streaming show. We're also on iTunes tomorrow and available by podcast as well. My special guest host today is former congressional candidate for District 19, Mr. Joe Davidow. Joe, thanks for coming in, my friend.
Happy to be here, brother.
You know, it's been a long time since we had you on air with us.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
You know how long it's been?
Probably a year and a half.
It's been a year.
1 year?
Yep, we went off the air on K-Rock in March of last year, and so it's been a year.
Well, I'm happy to be back. I probably would have been back sooner if the...
Oh, absolutely. And I would have had you back.
Yeah, and I don't know that was a very good move on their part. I mean...
Well, you know, we talked about it a little bit on our last show with them, and then we talked about it a little bit probably on our first show, with the new setup in the new studio. But Beasley was going through... They did kind of a trial period with the All Talk.
Yeah.
Okay. They wanted to try to compete with the Fox News radios and whatever other channels were trying that. And I don't know if it didn't work for them, or maybe they didn't give it long enough chance, or maybe the types of shows they had on.
I don't think they gave it you got to catch your regulars, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the people that I think when you get down to the specifics of it, like the most people that are going to listen to talk radio are probably your people that have jobs Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Right.
And then usually they want to tune in for those things, and on the weekend, like they're going to take time off with the kids or
Well,
the
I tell you, that was the weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
Our show, the 10 o'clock show on Saturday, #1 rated show in all of radio for that time slot. We were the #1 rated show.
And they
didn't axe us. You know, we canceled the show because they had promised to give us a chance for weeknights.
Mm-hmm.
And when they wouldn't do it, when Mr. Beasley said, "Nope, you're just not ready," and I said, "But wait a minute, the show you've got on in the 6 p.m. slot has 0 ratings.
Yeah.
0. It's so bad that literally it looks like people turn their radio off when that show comes on." He said, "Nah, we're just gonna. I've got some things on the horizon." Well, so that's when I canceled the show at the following Saturday. I said, "Forget it, I'm not doing it anymore."
And didn't they try to do something else?
No, what happened was he knew in the back of his mind that they already had something in motion. He knew, and we didn't know, and that's how the business
works.
That they were going to go back to music. Maybe not 100% to music, because I think they still have one of their flagship shows on, the 2 to 5 slot or something like that. But most of the day now is music.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of just went back to the old standby. They didn't know what else to do, so that's what they chose to do. And because of that, they went away from All Talk. And so I'm guessing, let's say we would have stayed on the air on Saturdays, our show would have eventually been cut, I'm guessing.
Oh, because they would have wanted to
They
go
were
back
going to music. Yeah. So it might have ended a little bit too soon, because I did miss it. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I know he missed it. I mean, Smitty missed it. I mean, we had a great time.
We have an outlet, too.
Absolutely.
And people get to call in.
And you've been on the show. I mean, we had callers lined up. I mean, depending on the topic you were on, you might have had 20, 30 calls calling in, and it was like so much that the lines were just busy all the time.
Yeah.
Depending on the topic. I mean, there's certain hot topics that people care about, and they don't care about others. Anytime you talked about religion or abortion, you're going
to get somebody.
Oh,
marriage.
Yeah, marriage, absolutely. People that you can relate to. And so, this show's been different because, as you can see, there's no Smitty sitting over there. And it's not
I don't
because,
know if that's a bad thing.
Well, it's not because I didn't want him to or didn't ask him to, but after the year, the 50 or 52 weeks, every Saturday of defending his position as the
Which was wrong.
as the liberal on the show.
Yeah.
I think it just took a toll on him.
Defending the indefensible.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
hard to defend something that you probably don't really believe. You know what I mean? You're defending it because you want to be the other side of the coin.
You mean like Juan Williams?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, it's fun. But as far as Juan Williams goes, you know, I defended Juan Williams when he got cut from what was it, CNN or MSNBC, whatever it was. So because as much as I didn't agree with Juan's position on a lot of politics, I agreed with his right to free speech.
Whatever happened there, that stance he took or something, right?
Well, yeah, he took the stance, whatever it was.
I can't remember what the issue was.
Oh no, I know exactly what it was. He said that if you were sitting on a plane and you saw a guy with a towel on his head, he probably used something more politically correct. But I'd say it as you saw a dune coon sitting in front of you, and you're a bunch of passengers sitting by. You're going to look over there and you're going to go, oh no, is that a terrorist? And apparently offended the 3 Muslims that were listening to the show, and because of that, they fired him. I mean, it was so atrocious because he was being honest. He said, honestly, for me, he didn't say you.
I remember that.
He said, if it was me and I saw this guy on the plane and he had this garb on, this is what I would think. Yeah, he said, I might be nervous. That's all it took.
And that's ridiculous.
But you know what? It turned out good for him. He got a spot on Fox News.
In his more
$2 million
comfortable
a year.
Yeah.
$2 million a year.
I'll take that for his job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Speaking of airplanes, by the way, the Malaysian airline.
Here we go.
I have a theory on what I think's going to happen.
Oh no, you've got one, huh?
I have a theory.
All right, I'm ready.
We're going to see this plane come back all dirtied up or whatever, right? It's got spray paint jobs on it, jihad, flying in somewhere trying to go over Israel. You got the guy with, the towel on floating in the background. They're playing Wagner, riding a Valkyrie.
They're coming in hot.
They're coming in hot. That's what I'm pictured in my head.
That's possible. There's been a lot of theories about that plane, and
how do you not find it?
Right? Maybe you don't want to.
Well, that could be one. Two, maybe it was vaporized. 3, maybe we really do have a terrorist job at hand. Well,
someone said, one of these countries over there, I don't know if it was Australia or somebody, they're going to go search with a deep sea, some type of a deep sea sonar that picks up the ping from as far deep as 6,000 meters. So it can hear the ping from the black box, I guess. So if they find it in the ocean, then we know what happened. It crashed by whatever means, and unfortunate, but at least we don't have to worry about it coming back to haunt us.
Well,
at least there's closure.
I guess. When you feel bad for the families too. How many people? 200 on a plane?
But it wasn't like 197 of them Chinese. They got a lot of people. You know what I mean?
They
can afford to lose a few.
Oh, come on!
Maybe there were some Indians on there too. I don't know.
They were just talking about that. I heard on the other station about how China has the birth enforcement that you got to give a kid up for adoption or something like that,
or you pay a fine.
Yeah, that's
but they've had that for a long time.
It's horrible.
They've had that for a long time. Maybe now if it was the liberals, if you asked a liberal and it was 200 aborted babies, they'd be fine with it. That's perfectly okay.
Well, and I was trying to think, you sit there thinking about that issue, and how do you take the position on that, and try to run through it logically. And generally, that's where Smitty helped out, I think, with some things, even though it was completely misguided and baseless. But you have one side that says that we are, pro-life.
Pro-life.
Well, the other side isn't going to be pro-death. They're not going to be pro-abortion.
Well, they can be. It's not fashionable.
We're not going to be pro-abortion. You're not going to be pro-death. So then what are you?
So they call it pro-choice.
But
there's only one choice in their mind, and that's to abort the baby.
Well, and then the choice becomes it's a choice of the mother, right?
Right.
Has there ever been a group like there's Mothers Against Drunk Driving? Is there
you mean like
Mothers
Dads Against Abortion?
Or Mothers for Abortion? Have we found a group?
Well, I think the Mothers for Abortion are the Mothers for pro-choice.
No, but
they won't use. No, see, that's the thing. The liberals, they can't use that terminology. If they use that terminology, it lets the cat out of the bag. They've found their definition. Okay, instead of calling it an abortion, it's called a choice. And instead of going to the doctor to have an abortion, It's Planned Parenthood.
But I mean, empirically, I'd like to get a group of women who've
Sure.
had children and are let's just call it pro-choice, not pro-abortion,
Okay.
pro-choice, and have them form a group collectively as mothers for pro-choice, and let's just have a debate, have it out, and see, because I don't know that you can really find a mother or a parent at any point in time that has one child and then says, you know what, we don't really have the capacity to take on another. You figure it out. You find it. You find a way.
It's inbred in them.
It's in you.
Most of the people that are pro-choice are people that have never had kids.
If you have a child, I don't see. I mean, and tell me, really, I'm open to listening to the argument on that. But you find a way. Maybe you eat less. Maybe you don't go out on the weekends. Heck, if somebody came to me and left a kid on a doorstep, you take care of the kid.
Well, see, and that's something. Not that that's changed in you, but since I last had you on the show, you've had another child.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
You know, and being a father definitely changes the way you see things about kids in general.
Without question.
Yeah.
I mean, and look,
And we don't have the instincts that the mothers do.
100 times,
Yeah.
I mean, more sensitive. And that's why I'm saying I don't know that you can actually put together a group that says mothers for pro-choice. I can't see one that would exist. But if there is, I'd love to talk with them.
Well,
And maybe
I
we
think-
can have them on a show.
I think that group is called the Female Liberals of America.
Well, if
know what
they
I
have
mean?
kids, let's invite them.
I don't think they do.
If there is a group of mothers with kids, I would love to come back and let's invite them and we talk about it because
Well,
I'm really curious.
The narrative that they've allowed, the narrative that they've chosen to make their stance palpable is to use the term pro-choice and to make it about a woman's rights.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to link it into the 1960s feminist movement, okay, giving the women more rights, okay, which when it first started out was getting women the right to vote, okay. That was like the first wave. Then the second wave was, you know, getting women more involved in the workforce, getting them, wanting to treat them more like men. Well, and in doing so, they've turned the beautiful woman into the idea that, okay, now they want to be on the battlefield, now they want to be able to play football, they want to be able to do all the things that men get to do, but it's because we're men, we have bodies of men, we are physically stronger than women. That's just the way God made you. And
I have to say it's not an easy job either.
no,
Like when you look back at what you have to do as a mother and watch those kids, I would prefer to be at work. It is not easy
hey
sitting
man,
there.
shh.
What?
Don't say this too loud in case my wife's listening. She thinks I'd have a hard job here.
But the truth is, any mother who's been through that or a parent, it's not easy. And,
Right.
and I think that there's a short shrift given to the difficulty of that job.
Right.
That, look, what happened to all the mothers in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s? What? They just didn't do anything. Oh, we're going to belittle them?
Right.
No way. That job was just as difficult now as it was then.
Well, back then, they had 8, 10, 12 children. You know what I mean?
There is no downtime,
Well,
especially if you're nursing.
the argument I get all the time, and I'm always arguing with certain folks on Facebook or on the phone here, whatever it might be, over this subject, over abortion, because you've got the people that want to be fashionably correct. And I say fashionably correct, not politically correct. It's fashionable because it's the new hip thing to be pro-choice. Oh, because I don't want people to think I'm anti-woman. Well, so you'd rather be pro-baby murder? That's the alternative. You're worried about being labeled anti-woman, but not pro-baby murder.
Maybe it's because of the extremes, is I think where it comes from.
Well, I mean, what is abortion?
Well, that's extreme, right? Is there?
But it's the end. It's the end. I mean, that's what
That's the
they're.
end. It's the most extreme. But the point is that in saying, well, how do you get there? Like, what are methods of contraception? You have condoms and sponges and different lady products that you can take. There's a pill and there's all these things.
Sure.
And I think that you have a lot
But
of
that would be responsible.
Well, and there's the line. And so what I think a lot of people who say that you're pro-life is practice responsibility, and that abortion is anything but responsible. It's
Right.
irresponsible.
Right.
And so that it'd be good to have him on. But
here's, because of your background, okay, your profession, I want to give you a scenario. And I played this same scenario out with another special co-host that comes on. He's a fiscal conservative, but a social liberal. Okay, so he's conservative
what is he liberal about?
Just about anything social, any social
so he's
issue.
For abortion.
Well, he says he's pro-choice. He's for women's rights, but he personally wouldn't kill a baby. Is what he says.
So you can't. But there's.
I know.
The two are inherent.
I'm with you.
If you remove abortion from that argument, then I don't think that any one of us is going to sit there and say a woman cannot make the choice to take the pill.
Right.
Well, that's not what we're saying.
Right.
So you've misguided the argument.
Well, this was the scenario I put down because his argument and many arguments, not just him, but I've heard it many times. So I'm able to use this same scenario, I think, to snare them into my trap and make them think for themselves instead of trying to see what's fashionable.
Much like an unsuspecting deer.
Exactly, in the headlights. Wham! All right, so check this out. Mother A with child in womb is driving herself to the abortion clinic and she's going there to get the abortion, okay, because she's 17, she's 25, she's whatever, but she doesn't want the baby, doesn't want to go through with the pregnancy. And had she made it there and had the abortion, everything's fine and dandy. There's no crime has been committed, no nothing. It's in the Justice Department's eyes. Maybe not in God's eyes, but in Justice Department's eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, so here for what we see now. But on the way to the abortion clinic to have her abortion, drunk driver crashes through the red light, smashes the car, kills the baby, the unborn baby. He gets vehicular homicide.
Correct.
Why? Because she didn't get the chance to choose to kill her own baby? Because this guy accidentally killed her baby for her? That's why?
Well, you're saying,
what I'm saying
you're
is,
creating a hypothetical in which he doesn't even have to be drunk.
Right, I'm making it out to where he's a bad guy because he was drunk. Let's say he wasn't.
You can make him a good guy, and that he accidentally tripped her and she fell.
Okay.
And then fell and killed the child.
And they give
He could sue him for wrongful death.
Right, but if she was heading down the stairs to the abortion clinic and would have made it there to kill her baby herself, no crime is committed.
Exactly.
So because she's allowed to choose per the Supreme Court's decision, no crime, no penalty.
Which is quite interesting is that if it hasn't happened yet, and that's what I find fascinating always about the law, any kind of hypothetical that you can come up with, it has probably happened at one point or another. And so it would be interesting to see, to really go to the extremes, if a woman on the way to an abortion or
and use that as your defense
in the abortion clinic,
right,
by accident, by somebody else's fault, winds up killing the child.
Right, before the abortion.
And then she sues them for wrongful death of the child.
Yep.
That's quite interesting. What your hypothetical is using a crime. Crime has now been committed under both, whether we're looking at it under civil law for purposes of liability or criminal law for criminal liability. What we're saying is society overall believes that child is alive.
Correct.
Overall.
Because they'll go through the court proceeding. The judge will call that child a living, breathing child because you just killed it.
Has to be.
But yet the doctor performing the abortion, the mother choosing to kill her baby, has no crime because of Roe versus Wade.
Well, didn't that one doctor go down?
What's his name? Gosden or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And I've actually got a clip that I'll play shortly on that. Here's scenario number 2. It's a hypothetical question. You hear all the time that the pro-choice folks, the crowd, as you may, they're always touting that, well, it's the 17-year-old girl. She's going to ruin her life. She can't finish high school.
Give it up for adoption.
Wait. No, you can't do that because then she'd have to go through the pregnancy and maybe a bad pregnancy.
Might teach you something.
It might. It sure might teach you something, wouldn't it? But so instead of what you just said, giving the child up for adoption. Let's say she has the baby, and she keeps it for a year or so, and then comes back around and says, man, this kid is really on my nerves. It's really cramping my style.
This kid's a pain in the neck.
Yep. So like my previous guest host said, okay, so she Casey Anthony's it. She wraps it up, throws it off in the river, whatever. It's never, she kills the baby. Well, at what age is the mother not allowed to choose to kill her baby anymore? I mean, they put these guidelines in, at 24 weeks or at 29 weeks or at third trimester, whatever. Why don't, if the qualifying event is the fact that the baby is just a hindrance on the mother? I mean, my kids at 3 are a hindrance. If I just wanted to get rid of them because they're a hindrance, what's the difference? They're both living creatures.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I think for the sake of their argument, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, it's not so like they could say that it's a hindrance, and I don't see that. I can't see what you can come up with, and that's why I'd really implore a group like Mothers for it, because...
So what about the dads? Why would the dads not get a choice?
I don't even know how.
Because once the baby's born, he has to pay for that child for the rest of his life, whether he's...
The dad may want to take care of it.
Exactly. But the dad doesn't get a choice. It's the mother's choice per Roe versus Wade.
Well, and that's what happens when you deal with an imperfect system with imperfect people making judicial decisions over other people's lives. And I see it happen on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that, while trying to do good, a lot of times the bench does bad. Their hope is to try to do something good to be Solomonic.
Unless at the time of the case, you've got a liberal influential bench or a conservative influential bench. Maybe you've got more, the majority is one group or another, so they're making political decisions, making policy from the bench.
Well, that's where we find ourselves now, in a pretty scary position.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this age right now, where our Supreme Court, and look, it's a sad day when it comes out, and I think I've said this on the show before, but it's a sad day when we're going to come in and say, oh, we got this guy who's conservative, and then we got that gal who's liberal. It's supposed to be a judge. You're not supposed to walk in there and say, this is the way that judge is going to go because he was appointed by this president.
Right. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, judging by the law, by the constant. But here's what's funny about that, I like this topic, and so we'll definitely get to it, and I'll make one statement here. It's funny that the liberals have deemed that any judge who judges based on the Constitution at the Supreme Court level is a conservative Republican judge. Well, if that's a bad thing,
then that's who you want on them.
That's who you want, because they are basing their judgment on what the country was founded on.
Well, what they're supposed to do.
That is what they're supposed to do.
It's just enforce the law.
But that's the opposite of what they want. They want the opposite of law enforcement. So they want what? Anarchy, Judge?
No, they want to control the system. It's all about control.
Regardless, yeah.
It's just about control. It's another guise, a way to just control. So for them, the court system is not the ends of justice. It's a means of pacifism. I mean, and then we get into a real deep kind of political theoristic argument, and I always come back to Hobbes. And so then it says, why do we even have court systems? Why do we even have government? And it's because life is nasty, brutish, and short, and that the rule under a king is better than no rule at all.
Right.
So then we have rule under an oligarchy, or we have a republic or a democracy. Sure. And so we give up the only thing that would ever control in society, which is violence. So we give up violence so that this government can then come in and tell us what to do, and we're going to listen to what the court system says and agree not to be violent.
Right.
Whether it's civil or criminal, whether you steal my money or you kill my daughter or something, sure. Either way, I will agree not to commit violence on you.
That sounds about right.
And that's what that's the whole social code over it. And in essence, in order for it to be fair, and this is what our founders knew, and Madison was so afraid of, if we're going to give that to the judiciary, right, they can become tyrants because there is going to be political influence, and that's what we're seeing.
We definitely have political influence.
And it shouldn't be there.
Before we get too deep into that, and I would like to, I've got one piece of audio that I'll use as the end of my abortion rant for today. and I want your honest opinion after you listen to it.
Fire.
You tell me if...
We got so many topics to talk about.
Oh, yeah. You tell me if you were a liberal, pro-choice advocate, and you hear this, tell me how you defend your position.
It's not the Obama phone lady, is it?
I wish. Let's see if we can get it to work here.
Good morning. Chairman Franks and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me. My name is Anthony Levitino. I'm a board-certified obstetrician-gynecologist. I have served in both academic and clinical settings. Currently, I practice in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I've been an obstetrician-gynecologist for 33 years, and the early part of my career, I performed over 1,200 abortions, over 100 of them in the second trimester, up to 24 weeks of gestation. Imagine, if you can, that you're an obstetrician-gynecologist and a pro-choice obstetrician-gynecologist like I was, and your patient today is 17 years old. She's 24 weeks pregnant from last period. Her uterus is 2 finger breadths above her umbilicus. She's been feeling her baby kick for over a month. She's asleep on an operating room table, and you're there to help her with her problem. The first thing you do is withdraw the laminaria that was placed in the cervix. The dilation of the cervix that's required for a D&E abortion at that level takes at least 36 hours. Later abortions dilation of the cervix can necessitate almost 3 days of preparation prior to performance of the procedure. First thing you're going to reach is for a suction catheter. This is a 14-French suction catheter. It's about 9-10 inches long. It's about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. And picture yourself, if you can, placing this through the cervix and instructing your circulating nurse to turn on the suction machine. What you'll see is pale yellow fluid running through this into the suction bottles of the machine. That was the amniotic fluid that was there to protect the baby. If this was a first trimester abortion, when her child would be that size or smaller, you could essentially do the entire abortion with this one instrument. A 24-week baby that we're describing here from last period is the length of your hand and a half again, from head to rump, not counting the legs.
Yeah.
Babies that size don't fit through catheters this size.
I've been to the bodies exhibit.
When you're
You can see
done,
'em.
reach for a SOFR clamp. This is one that I brought along so you could see what we're talking about. It's about 13 inches long. It's stainless steel. The business end on this clamp is about 1/2 inch wide and about 2.5 inches long. And there are rows of sharp teeth on this instrument. It's a grasping instrument, and when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A second trimester abortion at that stage is a blind procedure. You can't really see anything. Everything has to be done by feel. Picture yourself, if you can, reaching in with this instrument and grasping blindly anything you can, and pull hard. And when it finally pops free, out comes a leg that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in with this again and grasp and pull hard. Out comes an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And reach in with this instrument again and again and tear out the spine, the intestines, heart and lungs. Head of the baby about that age is maybe the size of a large plum. Again, the procedure is blind. You reach in, being careful not to perforate the uterus, and you have a pretty good idea you have it if you have your clamp around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they will go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the clamp and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you can pull out skull pieces. If you had a day like I had a lot of days, sometimes a face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose.
You just affirmed her right to choose. That's what she chose. And that baby was alive when they started this.
I don't know
pulling
how
all this
he
stuff
can. How he was able to. He said he did 1,200 of them.
1,200 abortions and 100 late-term abortions,
And you think about
which he stopped. And he was this doctor was doing congressional hearings for the Gosnell trial, and he was saying how horrible these things can be. Can you imagine the baby's alive in there, and it's
it is.
It's pulling their legs and arms off, and all that.
There has to be pain.
And yet that's what they say when they say pro-choice. That's what they mean.
I can't. There can't be anything else. That's inclusive of it. And if that's gone, then I don't think anybody disagrees with other choices that you may have in being responsible.
Let me ask you this: do you think that all these people that say that they're pro-choice because it's fashionable, or because they literally believe it and they think that what we just heard is the way that's just part of life is death and that's just what has to happen? Do you think that they believe in God, or how can they?
I was talking to my law partner. He's an older guy, very good guy, and he said at one point in his life he was dating a gal, and she had found out that he believes in God, and she had dumped him. She said, I thought you were an intellectual.
Yeah, that's how a lot of them see it.
And it's kind of bizarre. I don't know that, and again, I don't know that you could play that clip for the 17-year-old girl, and she's going to decide to go ahead with the abortion.
Or she may not. I mean, or she might, because maybe she doesn't have a child, so she doesn't have a child yet, maybe, and so she doesn't know that feeling that we would have.
Yeah,
hearing that.
I guess that's true. So
I'm
it affects my ears and your ears differently than it would as to
possibly
somebody that doesn't have kids.
Possibly,
guess.
But I think if you prefaced it, not saying that this is the audio you need to play for every potential abortion customer, but I guess if you prefaced it right, you could scare them with it.
I don't even know if it's scaring them. It's reality.
This would be nice to play.
You're informing them.
It'd be nice to play in a biology class.
Yeah.
All high schools have to listen to this from a doctor, certified medical doctor that perform these abortions. Let them hear it.
You mean that's not a part of Common Core?
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. Common Core's preaching, go get as many abortions as you can.
What was this is a good tangent, though, on the, hold on, I just lost my train of thought, because coming from the abortion trial, where was it?
Not the Gosnell trial.
No. That's it. The recent Supreme Court case, the Hobby Lobby.
Okay, yes.
I heard something, and I'm concerned about it. And I wasn't able to listen to the hearing, but I guess I didn't hear.
They didn't come up with their solution yet, did they?
No. Well, there's been no resolution, but it was heard at oral argument. And if people don't know, the Hobby Lobby case is basically comes down because they are a corporation, and the Obamacare law requires them to provide contraception to their employees. They, as a corporation, don't believe in the contraception, and so
because of their religion.
Because of their religion
of the owners, the owners are the corporation.
And so therefore they are, as a corporation, exerting their rights to the First Amendment, saying we have the freedom of religion, and that this law requires us to compromise our religion.
Right.
And so that in essence is the case. There is another company that's involved in that lawsuit. I don't remember the name.
There's two corporations.
But what I heard was really quite interesting, and I'd just like to go on the record and say it. I guess it's not Paul Clement. It wouldn't have been the attorney who's making the argument. Paul Clement's kind of a superstar for these big Supreme Court issues, but an oral argument. But it's the family's attorney who was on the news, and she said apparently there's like 14 different kinds of contraception, and the company provides for
A, B, and C.
Several of them. My biggest concern after hearing that was Supreme Court may make an estoppel argument, which basically says, well, if you're going to provide any of them, then you can't pick and choose.
Right. That's I've seen that before, not in that scenario, but even in the fire service, where a code official, a customer comes in, says, I want to put a horn or strobe in this office just to give some extra protection, and then the fire official says, well, you can't do that. If you do that, you got to bring the whole building up to code. Well, I just want one here to help me in this room. No. We're going to punish you now. You're going to do the whole building.
Well,
nothing, which is like what you're saying.
And it's so in essence, if they provide for other forms already of contraception, then they're what's called a stop from saying, well, we're not going to provide these. Do you see? Or we just it's a religious issue, and the position the church takes on it is abstinence.
Right.
The church's religious issue on this is abstinence.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to get into really creative legal arguments about what is a religion, which that's been argued in the past. You know, people who were arrested for taking peyote and things of that nature, saying this is a part of my religious service and my religion. And so the court had to go through a whole doctrine of trying to figure out what a religion is.
For real.
And so now we're talking about...
No common sense here at all. None.
So now you have what it would be an established religion, and the position on the established religion is that the only contraception is abstinence. And so therefore, if they're providing for forms of contraception willingly already, they may be stopped from saying we're not going to provide for abortion.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that was an interesting issue to look at, and I didn't really hear many people talk about it, and I'd be happy to go on the record and come back and say, I was right.
Well, you know... And it's funny because I've seen those types of scenarios play out at the Supreme Court level, and it almost seems to me that when you see that, they're doing it for a purpose, and it almost always seems to be a political purpose. Like you mentioned earlier, they're supposed to be apolitical, but yet they are hyper political. And you might see a Ruth Bader Ginsburg bring that up and go, "Well, wait a minute. You mean you provide some forms of birth control now? So you're going to pick and choose which ones? Oh no." You'll have to do this. To me, that's them just finding the way to bend it. Bend the consumer over. Bend the American over. Well, look, it's the Americans' private business. Why don't the government do what they were supposed to do and not intermingle with business? Remember, there was supposed to be a separation at some point. Remember way back when the government wasn't supposed to be in private business?
Well, what you have then is your whole list of cases, which was your fighting words was Chaplinsky, but your major Supreme Court cases that came down, and if I can remember the facts, it dealt with a baker in New York.
You talking about the other recent one about the?
No, this was years
not
and years
the baker
ago.
that didn't want to bake the cake for the gay folks.
No, different guy, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, but what had basically happened was, and you had this argument out with the healthcare law, and it was settled. And the argument was basically settled even under the what should be considered what we call the word dicta, which means it's not pertinent to the holding, but still can be used as persuasive authority. And so what we see here, at least coming out, is that in the healthcare law, and this is everybody crapped on Roberts for this, but I'm sorry. He got the other judges to agree on the Commerce Clause,
right?
Which means you stay out of business. And so, in essence,
so he set the precedent, or reasserted the precedent,
yes,
because that precedent had been lost long ago.
Oh well, and it had with a case called Wickard v. Filburn, and that's what they were using. And Wickard, which is, if anybody cares, and this one I know off the top just because I had reviewed it for that argument, was. It dealt with grain, and that the guy there was grain restrictions.
I remember this.
And the guy grew more grain than was permitted for the grain restrictions, and he said, "I don't sell any of it.
Right.
I hold it over, and my family and I eat it, and we give it to our workers to eat."
And the government wouldn't allow it,
and because it was above. And then the argument came in is that if everyone did that in the aggregate, you'd frustrate the design of the law. And then the question was, the law then, since in the aggregate now we can bend it and say it's not a part of the Commerce Clause. Well, it was. And that's what this kind of, the holding that Roberts came in and got crapped on for, and don't get me wrong, it should have just been struck down.
God, I wish it would have been.
It should have just been struck down. But we do have a decent record.
But do you think, though, that the small victory that we potentially have there for future cases on the Commerce Clause is better than the loss of implementing Obamacare?
I think there's two things happening right now too. One of which is we just had the president go on the radio today, or on the media today. 7.1 million people
signed up.
Well, we don't know
how many of those were individuals that had their health care canceled because of his law, and so they had to immediately go get something before they were fined.
Well, and so this is what I think is going to happen, and I've kind of foretold this, and it's nice to watch it start to unravel, is that, one, the system financially can't work, but two, we will have the first set of people to receive the fine, the tax penalty.
Okay.
And now the tax penalty can be challenged.
Okay.
Because
right. I remember Scalia saying that.
The issue of the tax penalty's never been challenged because it's never been opposed, and therefore
They
it
couldn't
wasn't
do it because it
justiciable.
hadn't happened yet.
It
That's
wasn't
right.
justiciable.
That's right.
So now the tax penalty's going to come up.
But aren't they? But hasn't he been prolonging the tax penalty? He had been
Yes.
prolonging it.
Well, because he's been prolonging the time
The
for
mandate
which,
and all that.
that
Yeah.
it's going to come to fruition.
Hoping to
And-
get it past the next election.
Because if once the tax penalty goes up and you get the taxpayers together, I think it gets struck down. I think it gets struck down
The
because
entire law or that
the entire
portion?
law, because that's the only portion left that was feasible. The only way you could, so what happens is the portion was the tax penalty, which is the only way they can figure out how to make it financially work. And without the tax penalty, there's no money left.
You know what I thought was comical?
gone.
A part of the law that I thought was comical that's come back to bite them now. And, they needed so many million people under between 18 to 26 to sign up for it because they're the people that don't go to the hospital. And they needed them to sign up so they could pay into it to help offset the cost of the older folks that use healthcare a lot. But then they realized, wait a minute, why aren't these young people signing up? And then come to find out, in the law it says because they can stay on their parents' health care plan until they're 26. So if you were a 23-year-old young person that wanted to save your own money and not waste it on health insurance, and you got to keep it on your parents' plan, would you arbitrarily go out and buy your own plan? No.
You wouldn't even know what it is at 23.
No, they bite their nose to spite their face and didn't even realize it.
Well, and he was touting that as well. And the other, 2 million or 3 million people that are between the ages of 17 and 26 that we've taken care of. Well, they were taken care of before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all nonsense. We don't even know we don't know who's paid. And if anybody's done anything in insurance, you could sign up till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
But until the check is cut, the insurance company doesn't have to do anything.
What do you mean paid? This was free insurance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, free health care. We just gave free health care to 7 million people who never had a chance to get health care before.
And you know what's wonderful about it, too? He always loves bringing in every one of his speeches or whenever he's talking, 2 people. 3. Look at this guy.
Look at this chump.
We helped this one guy here that had all
and we
these...
screwed all of you for him.
But that's what he does. And somehow we're supposed to look at it and go, I guess this thing really works.
I feel much better now.
What are the Kardashians doing?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah. Where's J-Lo's butt at again?
Oh, great. This guy's good. Everything's better.
So we got health care for Joe Blow over here, but yet my premiums just went up another 40%. Woohoo!
Or you're like me and my family, dropped.
No kidding.
Dropped.
The private insurance?
Yeah.
Well, now you can sign up for Obamacare.
I've refused.
I would too.
And I would go on a campaign to tell everyone to refuse, and here's why.
I've already said I would refuse too.
Here's why. Because under the law, they still have to cover you. Even if you don't pay, they still have to cover you.
That's right. When you show up at the hospital, they still have to cover you.
So don't pay.
Right.
Because you know why?
And then get the fine and then join the class action lawsuit.
Because you're going to pay the fine anyhow. So why spend even the second to go through the system to sign up when you're going to have to pay for it summarily?
I like that.
And then when you need to use it, hold on. The fine cannot match what they showed me, which is about 3 to 4 times the amount that I'm paying now. So the fine really can't be anything above that.
Right.
So I'll take the fine.
Sure. Hey, before we go to break, I've got a little audio from an interview today with Kathleen Sebelius.
Oh.
The genius website builder herself. It's a short clip, but...
What would Galifianakis say? What did he say on that interview? He goes, "Why did you get the guys who built the Zoom?"
I know. I wish I had the interview. That was great. All right, let's hear what Sebelius has to say.
On the table each and every day.
Yeah, but at least at last check, 64% of Oklahomans aren't buying into the health care plan. They don't like Obamacare, and they've been pretty vocal about it. Now, that's going to be still continue to be a tough sell, but we'll see how that plays out over the coming months. All right, Secretary Sebelius, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I think we've probably lost sound here or something.
Well, I can hear you,
okay.
But thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
So he asked
No
her,
answer.
No answer. She figures, I'll just pretend like I didn't hear it. But then I'll tell him I heard him okay. And
no
then,
answer.
And then the show will go over and we'll be okay. And then it'll all be over. That's what they've resorted to. I'm
Just don't
sorry.
answer.
I didn't understand the question.
Just don't answer.
I can't hear you now. I still can't hear you.
That's funny.
Just don't answer it. Don't answer it.
But that's what they're
They've
doing.
ran out of lies, so they just don't answer
That's
now.
what they're doing with the tax gal. She's claimed the fifth again
Oh, I know. I saw that.
on the IRS scandal. So we'll get no answers,
You know,
basically.
Congress used to have their own security force, like police force years ago. Congress had their own little police. They need to exercise that crap again.
You probably have volunteers. You'd have people
It
that
might
sign
have
up. No, I'm saying like if it was re-enlisted,
Oh, absolutely.
people would volunteer.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, the Fifth Amendment's one of our rights. And I agree to it.
Well, the problem with it is, and this is just it, it's freedom from self.
Incrimination.
What crime did she commit?
Right. Don't know.
What crime was committed?
Supposedly nothing.
So then,
But there must have been something. I see where you're going.
Then the fifth doesn't apply.
I like that.
Unless there is a crime.
Well, we'll be right back after this short break.
I started out with a 410 and moved to a 20 gauge. Every squirrel.
Welcome back to the program. The phone number is 239-689-8674. That's 689-8674. You can send me an email, jd@theledgeradioshow.com. Check out our new revamped website, theledgeradioshow.com. On there, you can click on the live stream, and you can physically see us in studio, streaming live high-definition video. There's Mr. Joe Davidow, my co-host for the night. Joe, thanks for coming in again, my friend.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, we were talking a little bit on the break about Russia, and this is.
I want to get your take on it.
Well,
because I have some feelings. Like you're commander in chief here.
All right.
This thing's coming down. We know that first off, it's not a surprise. So set the stage. We know what's going on in Ukraine. You have more intelligence about the issue, and I'll give you some background. That the president of the Ukraine obviously was a thug. He had a criminal record, very favorable to Russia. There was an issue that happened in which the Ukraine had the ability to become part of the EU, and then Putin comes back in and says, "Listen, I'm not only am I going to say that the checks are due, I'm going to remove certain favorable trade restrictions or trade barriers we had, and in addition, if you do come, I'm going to give you some enticement. I'm actually going to throw some more money into it." So they deny the EU move. They go with the Putin move with Russia, which they were going to probably do anyhow. And then you had the other half of the country saying, "Wait a second. This is not good for everybody. It's good for the few."
The other half of the country was probably the ones that got taken over last time, and remember getting their asses kicked and being slaves or whatever they had to go through.
But so now you got civil unrest in the country.
Right.
You know that Russia is a big player in this. Okay, you're the president. What do you do?
Me as the president of the United States?
Yeah.
I go, I don't really care, personally.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? The country's sitting right next to them. If you want it, take it. Just be careful with it. It used to be part of the USSR. If they're stupid enough to vote themselves into it, stupid enough or not, maybe it's a good move for them. I don't know. You talk to Ukrainian folks, they're very proud about Ukraine. Mm-hmm. They're very proud people. But if it's a legitimate vote and they vote to be annexed in to Russia, as far as I'm concerned, as the United States president, it's their business. But I've kind of changed my position over the years. I used to be very pro-military around the world, and it doesn't mean I'm not, but for me, not knowing what harms that would cause the United States
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that not seeing any harms, I'd say it's their business. Go for it. But you may have more on it. I don't know.
No. I mean, I'm close to being on the same page.
Okay.
I think that we have a real concern because history can repeat itself, and this is in some respects, as people have said, how Hitler got started.
Started taking over little pieces
I'm just
here and there.
I'm just going to take. So that's how he got started. So the question is, let's keep a watchful eye.
Sure.
But by the same token, and this is where it gets me, Obama comes out and makes these feigned and ridiculous threats that are empty at best, and the sanctions are
Russia
useless.
was laughing at him, literally laughing.
Useless. But as I'm trying to put myself in this position, I have another thought in my mind, and I'll set the stage for this one, is that let's say there's an issue going on in Mexico. and that we have oil fields in Mexico. We have American business interests. In fact, we have quite a few American citizens there. And now they have civil unrest and violence in the streets. Do you mean to tell me that we are not going to somehow intervene in our backyard?
Well, I think I see what you're saying. So Russia sees civil unrest in the Ukraine and steps in as the neighbor saying, look, we don't want you guys to have the wrong problems here that affect us. We're just going to have to come in here and set you straight. If it means taking you over, take you over. Because I'll tell you what, now Mexico to me is a whole lot different to the United States as Ukraine is to the United States. Mexico's our neighbor. They're causing us a lot of problems as it is with all the drug problems they got down there. I think our military should have went in there and just cleaned house.
But that's the hypothetical, and obviously we're going to go in.
I'm not saying that we would go in and take over Mexico.
No, but we would go in.
We would go in, we'd take out the problem, clean up the trash, rebuild their entire country like we've done to every country we've ever bombed before, or whatever the case may be. But they're our neighbor. We need them stable so that it doesn't overrun into us.
And then this is when I come back and I say, if you had a commander-in-chief that had any foreign experience...
he did. He lived in multiple countries, apparently.
had any foreign leadership... this is what you do with Russia.
Come on, he had Hillary Clinton as a Secretary of State. That was his foreign leadership.
Who cares? Yeah. What does it matter anyway?
Apparently not.
Yeah, right. So this is all you very simply do. I think you go out and you make a public statement instead of saying to Putin, "We're going to do these sanctions." You say to Putin this very simple thing: "We want to help."
There you go.
How can we help?
We're going to come on over right now and give you a hand.
Yeah. We're going to give you a hand.
Right. We'll send all this aid over, all these military guys to help you.
How can we help?
Sure,
and that's the last thing he's ever going to want to get done.
That's true.
Because then we see if there's anything nefarious going on.
That's true.
And instead, we make ourselves look like fools.
Yep.
So
it's been typical for the Obama administration to look like fools.
I, at the risk of sounding like a traitor, was actually at an event where Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, was.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is license to say that Ed said this, and probably isn't, but it doesn't matter because he said it in a public forum.
You can say anything. We're not FCC regulated yet.
Well, he said it in a public forum, so I have the ability to pass it on. The question was asked, what do you think about the Obama presidency? And his response was quite telling, I thought. Ned is a Democrat. He's going to try to help Hillary Clinton get elected.
Right.
But what he said was that it was typical of any type of leadership that had no executive experience. He had no executive experience, and he hired people who didn't have any executive experience.
You mean all those Harvard law professors had not run anything before?
Yeah, basically.
Weird.
But they're smarter. They're from Harvard.
Yeah. And they're going to make decisions on how to run the country.
For us, little people.
That's right. I would agree. No executive experience. You've got the largest economy on the planet. You've never...
Largest military.
Even had a job. You don't know how to work in anything.
What did he do? Well, they said he was a constitutional law professor.
He was an adjunct law professor, from what I understand.
Uh-huh.
He taught... it wasn't even a regimented course. It was like on an as-needed basis.
So he filled in.
Like a fill-in, yeah.
He was like a law school substitute teacher.
Yeah, on constitutional law.
You know,
but how is it that you're a community organizer? I mean, I guess, you know what, I take that back. That's not a bad thing to have studied the Constitution, because any general knows that to beat the enemy, you need to know the enemy. Mm-hmm. And to him, the enemy to him is the Constitution. So if he's studied the law and he's a constitutional professor, attorney.
Figure out how to get around it.
Exactly. How to defeat it. In order to know the enemy, you've got to read the enemy, study the enemy. So all the great generals read all the books from all the different, all of their opposing generals.
See, but you would be explaining what would be executive experience then. And so clearly he probably hasn't done that.
No,
and
no.
I think that that's typical in his approach, because his approach is to campaign
Yes.
and play golf.
That's all he's done. You could call him the campaigner in chief, because he's campaigned for 6 years. Campaigned for 6 years. George Bush didn't do that. As much as people hated George Bush, the man never campaigned.
This is a president who's gone on the Between Two Ferns, Zach Galifianakis show, Ellen DeGeneres show.
All the
selling.
all the social shows to get all the young people.
But he's going out selling. I mean,
which selling is campaigning, selling himself, selling his party.
This is the office of the president. He's not there as an elector. He is literally the president. And I think it's pathetic.
He's used to causing a group of people to rise up and become rabble rousers. That's what he's done. That's what he did as a community organizer, getting the black community to go after the white community so they can get some more free crap.
Was it hate-inspiring speech that he used?
Well, let me ask you this. If you went to a church that he went to for 20 years with a black liberation theology preacher...
Well, I guess who,
and,
right?
And Jeremiah Wright. Now, that type of theology is anti-white, anti-government. It's whatever can be gained by the black people. I mean, that's what I'm not saying that. I'm not even going to try to defend anything. That's just the type of church he went to. Now, I go to a different church. I go to a Church of Christ. I can tell you right now, they don't teach anything that doesn't just come straight out of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
They don't talk about trying to get the white people up or the black people up. And we got 40% on our church is mixed. We have probably 50% white, 10% Hispanic, and the other percent is black. So, and our preacher's very careful not to talk political. He's from Tennessee. I know he's a conservative. I can tell by talking to him. But he preaches what's in the Bible.
Well, that's just it. And what is it? That's what he's there to do.
Exactly.
That's what you go to church for. Otherwise, you're going to a political meeting.
I would like to hear him. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear him explain to the Democrats in the audience how they can't be both Christians and Democrats. Because to be a Christian and to be a Democrat is not possible. Because if you're a Democrat, you support the Democrat Party. Look at their platform. It's anti-Christian.
Well, what about those guys like, really, we could directly blame them. It was the Stupak Democrats who caved and actually allowed the health care law to pass in. And the Stupak Dems were the ones that didn't want the money to go to fund things like abortion. So, in essence, you would never have had this Hobby Lobby case.
Right. Was that like the Blue Dog Democrats or...
Yeah, I don't know whether a yellow dog or blue dog. I don't remember which one it was, but Bart Stupak was the guy, and they had the Stupak Amendment. Which was
I remember. Obama told them, we'll take that out of the law,
which you can't do.
And what he did was they took some wording out of it. When it came back from the Senate or the House, it was all put back in.
Well, the president doesn't have the power to alter what has been passed by Congress.
Wait a minute. He must have that power.
Why?
Because he's stopped portions of the law. He's put brakes on it and stopped it. And
here's what he can do. That goes to execution, which is implementation. He can't change it.
Right. Okay, you're right. Now, he didn't change it. But what if the law says shall be executed by this date?
I don't think it does it?
It was supposed to be implemented, 2013, whatever.
That's where you have your breakdown between what it would be as code, U.S. code, then you have your Federal Register, and then you have your whatever your rules are, your rules and regs of the authority. So,
the talking heads keep saying he's broken the law, yet no one has brought him up on charges.
Well, you know what, and I've said this, I could probably sound like a broken record to people who know me. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment provides for an avenue in which to enjoin to prevent someone from running for re-election to office if they have previously held office and then engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. Section 3, 14th Amendment, United States Constitution.
Well, he doesn't have to rerun for...
But he did.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He did, and I was telling all the talking heads, I wrote out and said, listen, what you guys are sitting there giving a redress of grievances like the Declaration of Independence on what this tyrant has done.
So call him up on his charges. Yeah.
Draw the line in the sand. You guys got the power. You
Right.
got the put the people together. No one responded.
You know why I think they did not? Because they don't want it to ever be used against them. Think
Potentially.
about it. Think about why the Republicans don't run roughshod over him and bring him up on charges. Go for the, just like they did with Clinton, with what happened with Nixon. You can impeach these people if you choose to, but I don't think they want to use what he's done against him, because then they can't ever use that. Then they can't ever,
Well, I mean,
be a tyrant like that.
You say, because then it could be used against them.
Against them, yeah, because then you've set the precedent that you can be brought up on charges for this, that, and the other, and they all go, well, shoot, we don't want any precedent set, because what if we get into power and someone thinks we've done something similar, and then they bring the charges up on us?
Yeah,
because they're not really out for it. It seems like, by and large, they don't care what happens to the American people. They only care about their next election.
Well, you know what?
Staying in power.
And that was the other thing that I thought was so comical to me, is we're listening to Obama talk about the 7.1 million people that have applied, and then he can say, none of which is me, my wife, my kids, any of the senators or the congressmen. Really, none of us that are so happy about touting the fact that 7.1 million of you have now engaged into this. We haven't. There's got to be some comedy to that.
It's all comedy.
I mean, it's like it's like Jim Jones up there with the Kool-Aid and saying, "I'm so happy that all of you have decided to drink this Kool-Aid."
Yes, and you'll all be killed soon, but not me.
But not me.
Or my family. I would agree. What's your take on...
we got an election coming up, too.
Very
Local
soon.
election.
April 22nd.
What, is that where you were going?
No, but I can.
I would like to.
That's fine.
What?
Do it.
Who's come in so far? Who have you talked to? What's going on? What's your take?
Well, I'll tell you what. I had, for our very first show back on air, I had Mr. Byron Donalds come in, because I thought that he might run.
Mm-hmm.
But as time progressed, we saw that there was a lot of money in this race.
A lot of money.
I mean, well over $1 million per candidate for the top three candidates.
You have to admit, on a tangent, it was kind of funny that, Page was the first one out there when Radel came out with the cocaine problem.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you see that pack come out. And I love the name of the pack. It was called Values Are Vital.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That tickled me. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah. No, so, but I asked, Byron, but he was, at the time, was still, he hadn't really decided yet or whatever, but I think now, he's come out since then and said he's certainly was not going to run, and I think the reason being is, it's just hard to raise $1.5–2 million
in a short period of time. It's like time.
It's hard to raise that kind of money in 2 years.
Yeah.
For someone that's truly grassroots.
Yeah.
Now a person like Paige Kriegel, he's got a super PAC. He's a doctor. He's got his own money.
Been in town for 30 years.
He was already a state representative. For 8 years or however long.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a lot of connections at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Lizbeth, and in learning.
Well, apparently, the Republican Party has told us that we should choose Lizbeth, right?
Yep. Well, that's because she's a current serving Republican, in the state. So they're going to back her, right? Regardless, they're going to back. That's just what they do. That's what they do. Well, what I learned from Trey Radel's people was that once a congressman or what have you starts voting on issues, there are two sides to every issue, at least two sides, two groups that are concerned about that issue, the for and the against group. If he votes one way, this group is happy, but this group is upset, and vice versa. Well, along with those groups come supporting money. So if you vote for it, the happy group gives money. The sad group does not, but then next time maybe they're happy, so they get money. So having said that, with Lizbeth being a sitting, states, I don't know, she a representative?
No,
she's
a
senator, state senator.
State senator.
Yeah, so a sitting state senator voting on issues, she's probably going to have her own super PAC or at least donated money because of some issues she's voted on. So she's got a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Kurt Clausen, who pretty much comes out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
And running as the outsider, which, true to form, he would be because he's never been in office.
Odd, though, with the, what's it called, endorsement from Mac, who would be an insider's insider.
Yeah, well, you know how these endorsements occur?
You got to choose to do their platform.
Yeah, you do, and I don't know if you heard, but Clausen he's signed on with the Penny Plan. The Mac Penny Plan.
I saw Kurt, and somebody asked me to tell Kurt what I thought of the plan, and I basically explained to Kurt that was why I even ran for Congress, and I was the only one to challenge Connie Mack in the first 8 years in that primary before he decided to run for the Senate.
Right.
So, I mean, I think anybody's ever heard me, and you know where I stand with that piece of legislation.
Oh, I know. And
but in any case.
But he's I don't know.
He's an outsider.
He's an outsider, but he's spending his own money. And when I asked him about it, he says, you know what? He says it'll be nice that if I get elected, when I make it there, I won't owe anybody any favors, as compared to most people.
I could see
when they get there.
I could see that, but you know what? It's hard for somebody to go out and cut that check on their own. I haven't looked at it.
He is.
I haven't looked at his books. You know what I mean?
He didn't ask me for any money. Didn't ask me for any money because he's got his own money.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to owe people getting to Congress. You know, if the guy's got that kind of bankroll and you're going to go take a $180,000 job, $180,000 a year is your job.
Yeah.
Maybe he's looking out for that. Maybe he does want to make a difference.
I guess.
Whereas Lizbeth and potentially Paige Kriegel, who've both already been in office, they're looking just to extend their careers in politics.
It concerns me, if you're just a businessman, why you would spend that kind of money on that seat. And they all of them had come to the Kyer Men's Republican Club, and I asked them one very simple question. You're one out of 400, and I think it's 35.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? And here's the next thing. What experience, like legislative, because that's what you are. You're a legislator.
Yeah.
Do you have that you're actually going to do anything? You can go in and vote up and down. Heck, I was saying Trey should at least stay to vote up and down until his term's out and not run for re-election so we don't lose a vote.
Right.
Because it's still robotic.
That's true.
It's an up and down.
That's true.
So
I thought he was going to stay.
Yeah, I don't. That was odd. I think everybody thought he was going to stay, but so
look at the money it costs us by him not staying, having to do a special
$1.7 million to do the special election, and then hold on, all the money coming out of these people's pockets.
Plus two campaigns back to back.
Yeah,
we'll have a special election campaign. Then the next 2014
was
election.
The primary is August or something.
It comes quick.
Yeah, so we got to have the
August. We'll have this all over again in August.
Yeah, and so they're going to be seated for a couple months, and then they'll be back again in August.
When, in all likelihood, the person that wins now will probably win then.
Yeah.
Or in the primary, if the person that wins now wins decidedly, and gets in there quickly and gets their name out, you'll have less people running because most Republicans don't like to run in a primary against a seated Republican unless their name is Joe Davidow. Okay. Because it's very difficult in Southwest Florida to unseat a seated Republican with the name Mac. Okay, that had his dad in office for 100 years. Was best friends with Porter Goss.
You mean whose great grandfather was a Hall of Fame baseball manager?
Didn't even know, but see, there's even more to the story that older people probably know.
Yeah. No, you know what though? The only thing I could see happen maybe coming out in August is that whoever wins, if it's only by a few points, you might see a runoff between the two of them then in the August primary, because then you don't get the third candidate in. Right.
Yeah. You're not going to have as many. You won't. You may have a couple in the primary in August, but
you're not.
I'd be surprised.
Yeah, you're not going to have another person jump into that because the money is going to be spent.
Well, think about all the donators that are giving money now because they're betting on their horse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're picking their horse. If their horse doesn't come in this time, they're going to be really concerned about giving more money come August.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because like there was a in the 2012 election where Trey was elected, it was like a power, like a vibe, because we finally got a Connie Mack had run for the Senate and he ended up losing to Bill Nelson. But we're getting fresh blood. We had like 9 people running for that seat, but it was very electric.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. It was very electric, and people were very ecstatic for their candidate, for their choice. And it seemed like once the bad news came out about him and his arrest and all, a lot of the people, man, they just were like taken aback.
I think you probably
and they spent a lot of money.
You had a lot of people that got behind him.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to him since it's happened.
No, me neither.
But you had a lot of people that jumped behind him, and I think I'm sorry.
They felt let down.
Well, but hold on, and I'm sorry, but in some respects I'm not.
Right.
And I'll tell you what I'm not sorry about is the fact that the people have come to a realization, a slap in the face, that somehow your endorsement from a former holder of the seat is going to have any value. Like, because you were there, I'm going to follow you into the fire, like or the water, like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Come on. And so, in essence, I think there was a big wave of groups. So you still had those people. I mean, I would go to parties or things at night and say, well, I happen to support Connie Mack and this kind of thing. And I'm like, well, good for you.
Yeah.
And so, I'll support you when you go decide to take a bath in a river too.
Right.
I'll support you in your ritualistic suicide. So, I mean, I think that what that happened there was that people were let down, but they come to the realization that we need to make a decision informed and not be led by those who tell us this is how we should vote.
Sure. Well, we'll get into that after the break. The Ledge Radio Show will be back in just a few minutes.
His enemies' feet, or by power their gaze cannot grow. When the Leviathan rise, every last man shall shake to the core of his soul.
Sell him on
Death is my call. I am a warrior, and this
Welcome back to the Ledge Radio Show, 239-689-8674. That's 239-689-8674. You can email me at jd@theledgeradioshow.com. Check out our live stream, also at theledgeradioshow.com. And I've got special guest host, Mr. Joe Davidow, in studio today.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming. We were talking about a lot of different stuff, but when we went to break, I want to ask you a question about something. Story came out today from The Guardian. Looks like James Clapper has, former Director of National Intelligence, confirmed that the NSA did perform warrantless searches on Americans' calls and emails. So now we've got, for some time now, after the Snowden leaks, we found out that the NSA and maybe them, the CIA, whoever else, who knows who else, have been listening to our phone calls or had the ability to listen to our phone calls, our emails, our Facebook searches, our Google searches, our whatever, without a warrant. Isn't that illegal in this country? Don't we have a right to privacy?
Well,
as one of our amendments?
Here's the thing.
In the Bill of Rights?
Well, and the question is, do we have it?
Or did we have it?
Or did we have it? Well, and that's always the generic question that you start at. And in some respects, you can and you can't, because there is a synthesis to what happens. So there's, and I hate to say it because I don't believe in that nonsense garbage understanding of a living, breathing Constitution. The Constitution is what it is.
It is how it was written.
Exactly.
Just like the Bible.
But by the same token, it requires interpretation. And there's people who disagree with me on this, and I'd love to have them on the show for a different talk. But it requires interpretation same as the Bible. And my point, at least, and I'll break.
Well, I would say the interpretation for me is that because it was written by men that were so much smarter than I am and they have more education than I do, that the interpretation I need is just maybe in clarifying exactly what
it means
they meant and some of the intent, and a lot of that stuff's written in a lot of other writings.
But here again, and you take and let's just go to the Bible real quick, and then this is a good segue into it. You take the Bible and you run through Leviticus, and there's sections of Leviticus that say, that you cannot eat a kid cooked in its mother's milk. Well, then does that mean that you can't mix meat and cheese, or does that mean that you can only maybe you can mix a goat with a cow's milk, or maybe another cloven hoof animal that chews its cud with the other animal's milk, or maybe it just can't be cooked in it. Maybe you can add it after. So, but when you get that, here's the problem: language is fallible, right? No matter what, language is fallible. If we have to synthesize language down, it's fallible. So now we come back to the Constitution. As best as it could be written, there's still things that are not, it's not a 100% perfect document, but it's the best we got working. So, what does it say? And what we're talking about is Fourth Amendment, freedom from searches and seizures. Unreasonable searches and seizures. The Supreme Court has come down and said that there are certain things in order that you don't have the right to be free from. And what they look at is whether you have the reasonable expectation of privacy. And in things that you have the reasonable expectation of privacy, you have the freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. If you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in it, then generally you aren't free from unreasonable searches and seizures. So what happens is, if you do have it, you need a warrant. And so I'll give you an example, and then we can come back to this.
Okay.
There's a case which came down with garbage. So somebody put stuff out in the trash. And the question became, the cops went through his trash, and they found...
Which they do all the time.
Which they do all the time. And they found what they were looking for. They connected it up to the guy, and they arrested him. So the question was, did he have any reasonable expectation in the trash that he threw out? The answer to that, the court looked at and said, no. You threw it out. If you cared about it, you would have done something to store it. You would have put it somewhere. You would have shown that you had a reasonable expectation of privacy. And now here's the difficulty with the emails.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things with Snowden, right?
Right.
What reasonable expectation of privacy have we actually shown? We've given Google, we've given Yahoo, We've given Facebook. I mean, we have.
All right. Well, here's
we
how.
have a password.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We've got a secure. It says on the site with your secured login and password. So I'm only logging in because they've told me it's secure, because I don't want anybody else to see these personal things that I'm sending.
Have you read the contract that you entered
No,
when you
I'm sure
signed
I have
in?
not.
And I tell you what, I haven't either. But I'm certain that when we read through that contract, it gives them the right to disclose that information to whoever they wish. And so not only do we not know who we've just bequeathed our rights to privacy, we don't even know who they've been giving it to. And so I think it's going to be a very difficult thing to say that in an email system, if you're talking about your Gmail account, if you're talking about your Yahoo account, something that's provided to you for nothing, that somehow you believe that you had the reasonable expectation of privacy in it. So unfortunately, while I agree that the wholehearted concept is nobody should be reading my damn emails.
Right.
Nobody should be listening to my damn telephone calls. Right?
But that's just the way we feel.
And it may not necessarily
it may not be lawful because of the contract language of these free services that we've
signed ourselves up to, and by that token we're held to the letter of the contract. If somebody breaches your contract and owes you money, well, damn well you better pay me. By the same token, if you sign that contract and you owe somebody money, you better pay them. So we in American society honor contracts. And so this contract says something, and you're going to say, well, I didn't read it. Well, you know what? That's your fault.
Right. Ignorance, what do they say?
Ignorance under the law is no excuse.
There you go.
And so what then happens is, I didn't read it turns into, well, it doesn't matter. Do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy? So they started out with something like the Reagan Mail. Isn't there a Reagan Mail?
There is. Yeah, that's the new thing.
And you have a reasonable expectation of privacy in a mail system in which you pay for and they have it within its secured, and there is no giving out of that information. So it's not like on your Reagan Mail or something, or anybody else that provides that service, you're going to get, an advertisement that you were looking for shirts, dress shirts or something, and now all of a sudden you're getting dress shirt advertisements.
Right.
Miraculously that happened.
That's true. That is how Google is. You start searching something, now you're getting those advertisements on your email page when you're going, wait a minute, that's awful coincidental.
Because it's not
because it's not private. They've been sharing this with all these. They've been selling this information.
Exactly. But let me ask you this: wiretaps.
But for the dumbed down person like me,
well, I wouldn't.
Don't I still, regardless of the contract language of Google or whatever, don't I still have a reasonable expectation
of privacy? No, because what you're saying is I'm ignorant of what it says in the contract, so don't hold me to it.
What about telephone calls?
What I think the court has said is that the tapping or the sharing of the information of the call itself, as in that the call was made, is something that you have to give out. So that the call was transferred from point A to point B.
Like the metadata.
Yeah, is what they call pen tap. Pen taps weren't considered necessary for wires because all you had was that the call was made and you had to give it to the telephone company anyhow in order to make the call.
Okay.
What they couldn't get was the content of the call.
But so they can get who made the call, for how long the call duration was, and where it called from and to. But the content.
The content, you needed a warrant, and in order to warrant, you had to have a reasonable
What if we find out they've been getting the content?
I think then here's how it goes down.
What if Snowden's waiting to see what America's going to do with what he's released now?
Well,
and then he says, okay, you're hung up on the content. Boom, here it is. They've been looking at your content.
Well, here you go. And this is the other avenue to it, and I'll break off and make it make sense. When you work with any state attorney's office, they always ask you a question before you're employed, and the question comes down to a hypothetical that there's a guy, you get this information about from a cop who's working at Miami International or wherever the international airport is, or for here we're at Southwest Florida, RSW or whatever, that there's going to be a flight coming in from Bogota or somewhere, and that there's going to be a guy coming off the plane, and he's going to be wearing a white shirt, blue jeans, having a green bag, and in the bag is going to be high pressured explosives that are going to wipe out half the terminal and kill 1 million people or something like that, right? So you then the cop tells you this, and you say, well, wait a second. what description do you have? Is that a fair description, or is it you just going to go search everybody, right? And so what they want to hear from you in the state attorney's office is that you're going to tell that cop to go arrest a guy. Regardless of whether the description is good or not, you're going to tell the cop to go arrest a guy, because here's what happens. You saved 1 million people, but the guy walks.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. So we may not be able to prosecute. We may not be able to use the information that we found out. But you may be able to save if it was there or it wasn't. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the rub. So, what it comes down to is, can you use the information? Not, did you hear it? And so if you really wanted things to be private, yeah, but,
So what are you saying? We need to stay off the grid if we want to be private.
That's the only thing you have left. Go out somewhere where there's no cell phones.
Move to Alaska.
Yeah, or heck, go out to the Bluffs in Georgia on the Georgia coast, or somewhere up North Florida. Heck, the Yulee boys, I don't even know they have phones up there.
No more cell phones. No more computers. No more Facebook.
No more Facebook. If you want to be private, you got to go off the grid, because that's the only thing left.
Get the bunker all stored. Get all your products stored in your bunker. All your food and ammo.
Because otherwise, you're holding things out to the public.
It's true.
And whether you're doing it or not, or utilizing these services, you just engage in those contracts. And the truth is, can they use the information? Not really. But can they obtain it? Yeah. So what's the constitutionality of it? And that's just it. So they can't use it in a court of law.
Here's the thing. Okay, let's say, so they can't use it in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
But haven't we seen repeatedly that the Obama administration has used information they've been given by certain groups to attack people through the IRS, through the FBI? Remember the lady that testified in front of Congress?
Yes.
In front of the committee, that she's a private business owner, and she tried to file for 501c3 or 4, whatever it was. And after that, and she had been delayed for 3 years, she was audited like 4 times by the IRS.
FBI investigations.
FBI had been there. The Secret Service had been there. These people had never been to her office in 20 years of business, but ever since she filed for a 501c3 to be tax exempt as a political organization or some political affiliation, whatever it was, she wanted to be a conservative group of some sort. Now all of a sudden she's being targeted by these. And let me ask you this. So we know that some information is being shared between the different departments, not for lawful, not for to be used in a court of law yet, but they're using the information to target you, to shut you down either as a voter or what have you. This and things like the Patriot Act would probably be okay under a regime that was not tyrannical. If you had a decent conservative or constitutionalist as a president, had constitutional congressmen and senators, representatives and senators, you wouldn't be concerned about them using this stuff against you. But when you got a tyrannical regime and they've got the power of this information, it's endless.
This is where you come full circle, though, because when you say, like, and let's stick with that lady who was starting a 501c3 that was a political organization, we were talking earlier about having the executive branch or somebody engage in insurrection or rebellion. I mean, against the Constitution. And that's what we have. If that's what you're doing, there are ways to move to impeach these people. Unfortunately, nobody does it. Nobody's got the chutzpah, the gumption to go forward on it. And so if they are openly violating the Fourth Amendment, there is recourse. And recourse is different depending on what the setting is.
Who's going to prosecute in a federal suit like that, in a Fourth Amendment violation suit?
You have to have the...
Who brings charges in that?
I can be wrong. I believe you have to have the House put together a committee and appoint a special prosecutor.
The House does it, or does the head of the Justice Department appoint a special prosecutor?
I think the House can appoint a special prosecutor.
I sure wish they would have already.
I think the House can appoint a special prosecutor.
In
I
some
can
of the
be
other,
wrong.
like in the IRS targeting scandal, That was supposed to. Somebody said Obama has to, or Eric Holder has to appoint the special prosecutor.
Well,
he's not going to. It's his own people that told him to do this.
And it could, but I think also it could come from you have them appoint a special prosecutor, and then they're brought up for proceedings. And then what you do is you lay the groundwork, the investigatory groundwork, to ultimately go back after the executive and impeach the president. But we don't have anybody doing that. And the reason why, unfortunately, we don't is because we've come so far afield of what it meant to be a representative, and that these guys are actually in there for the most part to continue being there.
Yes.
Continue living that lifestyle. Power. Continue living that lifestyle, and maybe do some good while they're there so that they can feel like at least the money was earned. And that's it. Stay true to the people that put them there, and that's what they do.
Let me ask you this. Had you been elected to the House, and you've got a partner. Did you always have a partner in your law firm?
No, not at the not at the time. I practice started by myself, but just recently.
Okay. So let's say at the
time,
2
partners now.
You can say, is your wife a partner?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say back then you and your wife were the controlling partners or the only partners, and you would have been elected. Would you guys have kept the?
I'm not permitted by the rules of professional conduct as a U.S. sitting congressman. I cannot practice law.
Oh, okay.
So I cannot be
a conflict of interest of some sort?
So I can't be engaged in the law shop. Furthermore, I can't even have my name on the law shop.
Oh, what if her name
well, my wife's still allowed to use her name.
Oh, she could still use David Al.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's not a bad deal.
Oh,
but,
yeah, I'm saying that's a good deal. She's like, yeah, my husband's a congressman. I mean, come on, you want to use us? We can pull strings,
But I can't. I wouldn't be able to practice just for that reason, that same reason. So to avoid.
But they're allowed to have insider trading, though.
Well, again, I mean, it's so ridiculous. To avoid the impropriety, but then it turns around that you're the only schmuck when you are actually following the rules where everybody else is just going around them.
Yeah, you'd be the only one following the rules when they're all up there getting richer. When they went to Congress with their net wealth was $4 million, and 8 years later it's $100 million. Yet they weren't allowed to be in business while they were there.
It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And I mean, and at some point in the future, will I run again? Yeah. But what I was trying to bring to the table, or at least get people to realize, is you're one of few. And so your job in going up there really is to hone in on the voice of the area, be the constituent for the voice of the area, and then translate that into legislation. Translate that into either preventing bad legislation or perpetuating good legislation.
I think that we could probably send a representative that could spend 20 years with all the other representatives repealing bad laws for 20 years. And we'd probably by then get down to decent laws in this country. We've got so many ridiculous federal laws on the books that are so ridiculous.
It goes well beyond the pale of what you could have imagined was going to be the growth of the federal government.
Yeah. Use the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, those laws, and use common sense to enforce them, to interpret them.
Well, you don't need nearly as much as the size and breadth of the current federal government. I mean, and
think of all the departments we could shred.
But what we've done is we've created a system, and it's really sad. Maybe we don't want to put this on, but what the sad part here is that we've created a system in which it perpetuates itself. So now the federal government picks up for the cost of you going to college, and then this is how you get rid of the cost: work for the federal government,
right?
Work for the state government. Because if you just go out into private industry, now you got to pay it all back.
That's right.
But we're going to forgive you if you work for us. So then they continue to perpetuate the system in which the federal government is this kind of cradle to grave.
That's right.
Or state or local government. And I'm not knocking those jobs, but what I'm saying is growth in industry in this country and traditionally any other economy in the world has been created by private industry, by people who are trying to make a way in life, make a living.
Remember that. And I argued this point with another special co-host, Brian the Lib from Naples, who works for a local government. Basically, he's with the fire department, and nothing wrong with the fire department. That's where he works, and it's a great profession. But just to give some background to it, the government, just like you said, all they've done is, or they've built their own kingdom that is unsustaining for itself. It can't sustain itself. But when it was first started, when people first decided to become public sector employees, to go work for the water department or the whatever garbage department, whatever public
school board,
any of that, they did it because they wanted a steady job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they wanted, they knew the county or the state was steady. They had good benefits.
Paid very little.
But it paid very little. And they knew that going in. They knew it, but they said, you know what? It offsets it because I'm helping my community, because I have community self-worth, and I'm getting good benefits. And you know what? They could afford the benefits back then because they didn't pay enormous salaries. Now, fast forward 45 years later with all the public sector unions and the using the leverage of the unions against their own people, the salaries have gone sky high to where the salaries of the public sector employees far outpace the private sector, which has never sustained itself in a society. You've got a kingdom of public employees over the peasants now who work for them to pay their taxes. And on top of that salary, they've got a phenomenal retirement. And then they bitch about it when they have to contribute 3% of their own retirement.
And that's where we find ourselves. And,
yes.
And so there's a few things you could say, and one of which is the reason we have the Constitution is because necessity is the mother of all invention, and that they didn't have another option.
Right.
They were required to come up with something.
They had to. They had to.
And why did the United States in its beginning years have so many patents and so much growth? Because we had competition. Necessity was the mother of all invention.
Yes.
And so where do we find ourselves today? But really, and I think this comes back to my other law partner, Jim, is on the brink of where Rome found itself, and this is what we knew. We knew that Rome was going to fall when we no longer knew who were the leaders in science, the leaders in math, the leaders in theory, the leaders in the arts. When in Rome, we knew who were the gladiators, and we knew no one else. Rome was on its way out. If you can get people,
is that similar to here, where we know all about Jay-Z and Beyonce?
We keep up with the Kardashians,
yeah,
but we have no idea.
Right, Tripod?
We have no idea who the vice president is, who the past president was, who our senator is, and so realistically we are.
But we know who Barack Hussein Obama is.
Maybe
because he's just like Jay-Z and Beyonce. Boy, he's a superstar.
Maybe we saw him on the show.
Yeah,
so,
that's what it was. It was on a show.
And so that's in essence the sad reality
of
where our country finds ourselves.
It's very true.
And my part to blame because I've taken part in it. Yeah, I wish we had some type of program.
I stopped watching American Idol, so I'm no longer the problem.
I wish we had some type of program to which we would know who the leading scientists in the cures for cancer were, and that there was more studies about that and going into space. No, we need to have shows about nothing.
Well, and we had to take God out of school because God forbid you teach about the oldest book we have.
And so is there a way to save it? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But Levin's tried to put up those amendments, and I think some of which I've proposed actually in the past. And
you want to apply to work for him at his law firm.
The what is it called? The Liberty? Something freedoms. I can't remember. It's two words.
Something like that. Something like that.
I wrote to Levin with the thing about the 14th Amendment. Nothing back.
Oh no.
I don't know what it is.
Well, you got to remember he's got his law thing, but he's also making money off the radio. I mean,
and that's where. That's what controls.
He thrives on the controversy. I mean, him and Hannity and us and everybody else.
You thrive on the controversy.
Well, the thing is, if there's controversy, then we have ratings. If we had a great Republican president with a great Congress and great Congress and we could repeal all these ridiculous laws.
What are you going to talk about?
I wouldn't need to have a radio show.
And so, but
I don't do it because I enjoy it. I do it because I'm hoping that I'm reaching somebody.
You ready? And here's the difference between you and all them. You're an honest man, and you would actually say it.
I buy that for $1.
Yeah, well, I'll give it to you for free.
We're up against the hard break, the end of the show. Thanks to those listeners out there. Next week, we'll be back same time. Remember, you always go to the website, theledgeradioshow.com. I want to thank Tripod Billy and for always taking care of us on the production side of things. I want to thank our special co-host this week, Mr. Joe Davidow.
Happy to be here.
All right, Joe. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.